Welcome to a new Daily Top Askreddit video. Today's topic.
Who is a bad guy in history who actually wasn't a bad guy? That woman who spilled McDonald's coffee on her lap. Yeah, that whole story has much more to it than the McDonald's propaganda would have you believe. From what I remember, that McD's location was serving coffee way hotter than they were supposed to and they knew it. They had been notified of that too but continued to serve scalding coffee. When the victim spilled her coffee, it was so hot that it essentially fused her thighs together. You can find photos online of her injury and it is no joke. I believe she also only sued for the cost of her medical bills but the jury determined she deserved much more, which led to however many millions she received. MCDs also have been told many times about this issue, how hot it was. People never see the whole story. They just think the lady was suing just to get money. And it wasn't. We studied this case in my law class. McDonald's knew their coffee was too hot, hotter than legally allowed. They did it to get more coffee per bean. They had been sued by other burn victims and ordered to reduce the temperature. They didn't. IARC, the woman's labia melted and she had third-degree burns. All she wanted was medical bills covered because her insurance wouldn't cover it. In response, McDonald's started a smear campaign against her. The judge issued punitive damages, a punishment for the continued reckless behavior by McDonald's. She was awarded a single day's profit from coffee sales. That's all, 1 day of coffee profit. Because her insurance wouldn't cover it. Let's make sure we understand the real evil in this story. That in the USA, if your labia gets melted, you can't go to the hospital and get doctors to help fix it. Because of the screwed up healthcare system. Actually, the jury awarded the insane damages you hear about. The judge remitted that award to a somewhat less insane amount. Then the plaintiff settled for a much lower sum. Something in the area of $300,000. IARC, after the judgment, even though she was legally entitled to the entire remitted amount that was still in the millions of dollars. A dingo really ate her baby. This one is so awful. Her baby was brutally killed and eaten. Imagine knowing that about your child. Then she was accused of murder. And finally the entire world made a joke out of it. Even Elaine on Seinfeld. These poor people suffered through their lives so damn hard because people thought the death of their baby was funny. I can't even imagine their heartache. She wasn't just accused of murder, she was arrested, convicted, sentenced to life in prison. She served over 3 years in prison. The parents went on to have another baby and Mrs. Chamberlain had to give birth in prison. Wiki. It's like that one scene in Tropic Thunder where one character makes fun of another Aussie character with that and he said, "Pump the brakes." That shit really happened. It was a national tragedy. In Sweden, a man was arrested for the murder of his wife, but she was actually killed by a moose. They thought he had used a lawnmower to kill her because of the damages on her body. It took a long time for them to write him off as a suspect and it ruined his life. Edit. Sources in English are hard to find, but there is a book about it in Swedish called Pa Osannolika Skall, and some documentary. Very few English articles about it, but his name is Ingemar Westlund if anyone wants to try find something. Holy hell. How does a moose inflict damage that would make people think a fucking lawnmower did that? Edit. I know mooses, meese, are huge, but in my mind they can only inflict blunt force trauma, while lawnmower would leave cuts. Jesus was given vinegar to drink by the Roman. It turns out that the Roman military provided their troops with a water-vinegar mixture to drink. Because it helped them replenish their salt levels after perspiring. So, the only thing the Roman did was to offer Jesus the sip of his own drink rather than making him drink vinegar as punishment or a dig. I tried the vinegar-water drink of the Roman legionnaires, and the one that was flavored with local herbs from Syria Palestina is actually quite tasty and refreshing. I'm willing to bet that Jesus actually enjoyed his last drink. I'm willing to bet that Jesus actually enjoyed his last drink. Oh Father, Jesus cried in agony. Forgive them their sins, for this herbal vinegar drink is tasty and refreshing. Quote. In Braveheart, William Wallace gets betrayed by Robert the Bruce, which never happened. He was loyal to the end. That movie made me so angry. I grew up on it, and loved it for what I assumed was a historically accurate portrayal. Not only is the movie absurdly inaccurate, the real history is arguably more interesting than the movie. There was no need for artistic restructuring. They could have just dramatized the actual events and it would have been a great movie. My favorite detail about Braveheart is the Battle of Stirling Bridge, where William Wallace famously used a bridge to negate the English numerical advantage. Think 300 and the hot gates. So of course the movie showed the battle on a giant, empty field with nary a bridge in sight. It's a toss-up between this and the fact that Braveheart wasn't even Wallace's title that takes the cake for extremely stupid Hollywood biopic inaccuracies. Richard Jewell, security guard at the Atlanta Olympic who was blamed for the bombing. The film about him was excellent. I haven't seen it yet, but I read when it came out how the media had portrayed him guilty. He died not long after and never got the recognition he deserved. He was mocked for moving in his with mother. He and his mom did an interview on Oprah some time later. They said it was because his mom was sick and he was taking care of her. It's really not that uncommon for middle-aged people to move in with aging parents. BTW, his mom is still alive last I checked. She is still friends with his lawyer and their children. She is apparently a very nice woman. Oh man, my family still thinks I'm a failure cause I was my mom's caregiver for her final years. They never called, and never visited cause, you seem to have things under control. After 5 years of emphysema, she took a turn for the worse and developed lung cancer, from which she passed a few months post-diagnosis. Then it was my fault cause I didn't catch it sooner. A year later and I no longer know my own purpose cause being a caretaker was who I was as a person. And they see me as a failure, even though they didn't visit or call her on her deathbed. But it's my fault they didn't do that. Fuck people.